What if Canadians suddenly stopped crossing the border this summer? Imagine quiet hotels, half-empty resorts, shuttered restaurants, and shopping malls begging for customers. It sounds dramatic, but for many U.S. states, this isn't just a what if, it's a potential crisis waiting to happen. Here's something most people don't realize. Canada is the single biggest source of international tourists to the United States. Year after year, more Canadians visit America than any other nationality. In fact, they don't just come for quick vacations. Many drive across the border for shopping trips, sporting events, family getaways, or even months-long escapes from brutal Canadian winters. It makes sense when you think about it. The two countries share the longest undefended border in the world. It's easy for Canadians to drive across into New York, Michigan, or Washington State for the weekend, or hop on a short flight to Florida, Arizona, or even Hawaii. Beyond convenience, there's a sense of familiarity. We speak the same language, watch the same sports, shop in the same stores, and enjoy the same cultural touchstones. For Canadians, the U.S. doesn't feel foreign. It feels like an extended backyard. But here's where things get serious. There are 7 U.S. states where Canadian visitors aren't just a bonus. They're the lifeline of summer tourism. Without that steady flow of Canadian dollars, hotel rooms would sit empty, local attractions would lose their biggest fans, and businesses from ski resorts to outlet malls could see their profits vanish. In these places, Canadian tourism isn't just welcome, it's essential for survival. So, let's break it down. From the beaches of Florida to the casinos of Nevada, these are 7 U.S. states that could crash without Canadian tourists this summer. State 1, Florida, the snowbird paradise. If there's one U.S. state that embodies the deep connection between Canada and America's tourism economy, it's Florida. Since the 1950s, Canadians have been flocking to the Sunshine State. They're drawn by its endless beaches, warm climate, and family-friendly attractions. Over the decades, this migration became so entrenched. Florida earned a nickname, the second home of Canada. The most iconic group here is the snowbirds. Canadian retirees escaped the bitter northern winters by spending months in Florida's condos and vacation homes. From Fort Lauderdale to Naples to Tampa Bay, entire neighborhoods swell with Canadian license plates each winter. They don't just rent, they buy. Canadians are among the largest foreign owners of Florida real estate. They pour billions into condos, vacation homes, and golf community developments. But the connection goes beyond property. Canadian visitors fill hotels, line up for tea times, and flood into Disney World and Universal Studios. Restaurants, car rentals, shopping centers, and theme parks all thrive on this seasonal boom. Canadian tourism is so vital that some Florida businesses advertise in Canadian newspapers. Some even price their packages in Canadian dollars. The economic ripple effect is staggering. If Canadian arrivals dropped significantly, Florida would see a sharp decline in hotel bookings, vacation rentals, and resort stays. That means fewer jobs for hospitality workers, less revenue for small businesses, and a hit to state tax income. For Florida, Canadian tourism isn't just sunshine money. It's the foundation of its year-round tourism economy. State 2, Arizona, desert getaway. Florida isn't the only state where snowbirds land. Thousands of Canadians also escape harsh winters by heading southwest to Arizona. With its dry desert climate, stunning golf courses, and spa-filled resorts, Arizona has become a magnet for retirees seeking warm weather without the humidity. Cities like Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Tucson are top destinations. Canadians fill long-stay rentals, gated retirement communities, and vacation resorts. Unlike short weekend trips, Canadians often stay for weeks or even months. They pump consistent money into local businesses. Restaurants, golf clubs, shopping malls, and healthcare services all benefit from this steady demand. The travel link is strong, too. Air Canada and WestJet run frequent direct flights from Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. They fly into Phoenix and Tucson, making Arizona one of the easiest U.S. escapes for Canadians. The real estate connection is also significant. Many Canadians purchase desert condos or invest in property. They use it part-time and rent it out the rest of the year. Economically, the impact is undeniable. Canadians contribute billions to Arizona's economy, not just in tourism, but also through healthcare and service industries. These industries cater to long-term stays. Without them, entire resort towns would struggle with empty rooms, especially during what should be their busiest winter months. For Arizona, Canadian visitors aren't just tourists. They're part-time residents keeping the desert economy alive. State 3. California, the West Coast connection. For Canadians, especially those from British Columbia and Alberta, California is the ultimate West Coast getaway. It offers the perfect mix of entertainment, adventure, and sunshine. Families flock to Disneyland in Anaheim. Thrill seekers chase Hollywood tours. Beach lovers head for Los Angeles, San Diego, or Malibu. California isn't just a destination. It's a tradition for Canadian families looking for the big vacation. The appeal goes beyond the obvious tourist attractions. California's wine country in Napa and Sonoma draws Canadian travelers. They're eager for luxury experiences. Ski enthusiasts head to Lake Tahoe in winter. Road trippers drive the iconic Pacific Coast Highway from Vancouver to Los Angeles. Few routes capture the imagination like that coastal drive. For Canadians, it's as much about the journey as the destination. Spending patterns are telling. Canadians pour money into California's theme parks, luxury resorts, shopping malls, and coastal towns. The proximity makes it especially popular with Western Canadians. They see California as their natural vacation hub. Cross-border travel is so common. Many California hotels and resorts specifically market to Canadian travelers. If Canadians suddenly stopped visiting, the state would feel it. Theme parks would lose millions. Wine country tourism would take a noticeable dip. Ski resorts like Tahoe would see thinner crowds. California's tourism machine is massive, but Canadians make up a reliable and essential piece of the puzzle. Their absence would leave a gap that domestic tourism alone couldn't easily fill. State 4. New York, the shopping gateway. While Sunshine States attract long-term Canadian visitors, New York thrives on cross-border weekend traffic. For decades, Canadians from Ontario and Quebec have poured into upstate New York. They come for quick getaways, shopping trips, and sporting events. Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and Syracuse are household names, not just for Americans, but for Canadians looking for an easy cross-border adventure. Shopping is the biggest draw. Outlet malls, retail centers, and big-box stores see waves of Canadian customers every weekend. Buffalo's malls rely heavily on Ontarians driving down. They load up on goods often cheaper or more varied than back home. Beyond shopping, NHL games, NFL matchups, and concerts attract thousands of Canadian fans. They fill seats in Buffalo and New York City. But the connection isn't only about short trips. Many Canadians own lake houses and cabins in upstate New York. They treat them as summer escapes. That means they invest in local property, groceries, marinas, and seasonal services. Their spending spreads into small-town economies across the state. The pandemic provided a harsh reminder of this dependency. When the border closed, Buffalo's retail economy collapsed almost overnight. Hotels sat empty. Restaurants cut staff. Shopping centers reported massive losses. It was proof of how tightly tied New York's economy is to Canadian foot traffic. Without Canadians, New York's summer tourism scene would look very different. Fewer cars on the road to Niagara Falls. Emptier outlet malls. Thinner crowds at stadiums. For border towns especially, Canadian visitors aren't just welcome. They're the difference between profit and survival. State 5. Michigan, the Great Lakes. Connection. Michigan and Canada are neighbors bound by water, sports, and weekend escapes. The two share a border through Windsor, Detroit, and the Twin Sault St. Mary's. That makes cross-border travel quick and natural. For generations, Canadians, especially those from Ontario, have poured into Michigan. They come for short getaways and summer holidays. Fishing trips and boating on the Great Lakes are a huge draw. Canadians head to northern Michigan's pristine lakes and forests. They rent cottages, launch boats, and stock up on outdoor gear. In many of these resort towns, Canadian dollars make up a significant slice of seasonal income. Small marinas, rental shops, and family-owned restaurants rely on this steady flow each summer. Sports also play a surprisingly big role in the Michigan-Canada connection. The Detroit Red Wings are often nicknamed Canada's second favorite hockey team. Thousands of loyal fans cross the border for games. The Detroit Tigers, Pistons, and Lions all benefit from Canadian ticket sales. On game days, Windsor and Ontario license plates flood Detroit's parking lots. Then there are the casinos. Windsor's own casino competes with Detroit's big players. But plenty of Canadians cross over for the bigger city experience, combined with shopping trips, concerts, and nightlife. This creates a steady two-way economic engine. The truth is, without Canadian dollars, many border towns in Michigan would struggle. Northern cottage industries would see massive drops in bookings. Detroit would lose a chunk of its fan base. Local service industries would feel the pinch. Michigan's economy may be industrial at its core, but in tourism, it relies heavily on its Canadian neighbors. State 6, Nevada, Vegas loves Canada. When it comes to Canadian tourism, few places symbolize indulgence quite like Las Vegas. For decades, Canadians have treated Vegas as their go-to playground. That makes Nevada one of the most Canada-dependent states in the country. The connection is built on accessibility. Direct flights from Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver bring tens of thousands of Canadians to Las Vegas every year. These visitors don't come for quiet weekends. They come to spend. From luxury hotel suites to high-stakes poker tables, Canadians contribute billions to Nevada's entertainment industry. Casinos, restaurants, and live shows thrive thanks to their steady attendance. But the appeal isn't limited to gambling. Canadians flock to Vegas for world-class concerts, sporting events, and bachelor parties. Even conventions draw Canadian companies to host events in Las Vegas. They fill up massive hotel ballrooms and generate business tourism on top of leisure spending. Unlike some destinations that see Canadians trickle in, Las Vegas gets them in waves. Entire flights are packed with Canadian tourists ready to hit the Strip. For WestJet and Air Canada, Vegas is one of the most popular U.S. routes. The city has even tailored its marketing to Canadians. It offers package deals priced in Canadian dollars during tough exchange rate seasons. If Canadian tourism were to vanish, the impact would be immediate and visible. Hotel occupancy rates would fall. Casinos would see lighter tables. Concerts would lose a reliable segment of their audience. For a city built on tourism, losing Canadian visitors would be like pulling a card from the bottom of a house of cards. Nevada's glittering desert oasis depends heavily on that north-of-the-border crowd. State 7, Hawaii, the dream escape. For many Canadians, Hawaii isn't just a vacation, it's the dream. White sand beaches, volcanic landscapes, and world-famous surf define the islands. They've become one of the most desired tropical escapes for generations of Canadian travelers. What sets Canadians apart from other visitors is their consistency. Hawaii sees a strong seasonal flow of Canadian arrivals, especially during the winter holidays and spring break. When snow piles up in Alberta or British Columbia, Canadians head west to escape into paradise. Airlines like WestJet and Air Canada run direct flights from Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. That keeps the islands well connected to Canada. Once they arrive, Canadians often stay longer than the average U.S. tourist. Instead of a quick 4-day trip, it's not unusual for Canadians to spend 1, 2, or even 3 weeks in Hawaii. That means more hotel nights, more restaurant meals, and more excursions. From luau's to whale-watching tours, Canadians spread their dollars across nearly every sector of the Hawaiian economy. The economic ripple effect is massive. Canadians rent cars, fill resorts, and keep flights profitable. For airlines, these routes are essential. For hotels, Canadian bookings make the difference between low and high occupancy rates, especially during off-peak times. If Canadian tourists suddenly disappeared, Hawaii would feel it immediately. Resorts would lose a chunk of their long-stay guests. Airlines might cut back on routes. Local businesses would see their reliable winter crowd vanish. For Hawaii, Canadian visitors aren't just seasonal tourists. They're lifelines that keep the island's tourism engine running strong. The invisible Canadian power in U.S. tourism. By now, one thing is crystal clear. Canadians are the invisible power behind U.S. tourism. They don't always grab headlines like overseas travelers, but their presence is steady, reliable, and deeply woven into local economies across America. Unlike some international tourists who arrive in seasonal bursts, Canadians visit year-round. They drive across borders for a weekend of shopping. They fly south for winter escapes. They spend entire seasons living as part-time residents. Their loyalty is unmatched. They return to the same resorts, condos, and cottages year after year. They support businesses that depend on them. What makes Canadian tourism even more valuable is consistency. Canadians don't just spend big once, they spend steadily. They book extended stays. They fill restaurants and sports arenas. They fuel service industries from healthcare to real estate. In places like Florida, Arizona, and Hawaii, Canadians are almost indistinguishable from locals during the winter months. They aren't just tourists, they're temporary residents. They invest in communities as if they were their own. The pandemic was a sobering reminder of this invisible power. When the border shut down, countless U.S. towns, cities, and states felt the loss immediately. Hotels sat empty. Sports arenas lost ticket sales. Malls went quiet. Seasonal businesses closed their doors. What many Americans realized in that moment was that their economies weren't just supported by domestic tourism. They leaned heavily on their neighbors to the north. It's also a lesson in economic fragility. For states like Michigan or New York, one closed border meant millions lost in retail and entertainment. For Florida and Arizona, one missing winter season meant thousands of job cuts. The United States may be the world's largest economy, but even giants have pressure points, and Canadian tourism is one of them. So the next time you see a car with Ontario or Quebec plates parked outside a U.S. outlet mall, or hear Canadian accents on a Florida beach, remember this: those travelers aren't just visiting, they're sustaining. They're part of the invisible lifeline keeping America's tourism industry strong. The U.S. may be the giant, but when it comes to tourism, sometimes it leans heavily on its friendly neighbor to the north.